It's really my extreme honor to introduce to you our keynote diplomatic roundtable for today's event. Usually when we think of a keynote address, we think about one speech from a prominent person. But for an event like this, I was really struggling to try to choose which voice do we hear. And so I wanted to hear multiple voices in the region. And it was that difficulty in trying to choose which voice that I encountered. I thought about an unconventional way for a keynote, which is to try to gather not just one prominent voice, but a group of prominent voices. And my hope was to get on stage maybe two diplomats. I struggled because we have four. And this was beyond my hopes when I put this together. And so today we're joined by four diplomatic representatives who are all hosted here in Los Angeles. I will briefly introduce each speaker alphabetically by their last names, and then I encourage you to look at our website, and you can see a much up their full biography. So let me start alphabetically with Miss Emily Cloak, who is the British Consul General here in Los Angeles, Senior Representative of the UK government in Southern California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and Hawaii. Consul General Cloak has a range of policy, commercial, and international experience working for her government, with her most recent roles including Deputy CEO for the UK Africa Investment Summit in 2020, and senior leader in the Department of International Trade Sectors Group. Other postings have included working as trade director for the British Embassy in Tehran and being the head of trade at the British Embassy Sweden. Next on our list is Mr. Francis Maynard Melion, consul at the Philippines Consulate General in Los Angeles and head of the political and economic section and overseas voting section. Prior to his current role, Consul Melion served as Special Assistant at the Office of Undersecretary for Civilian Security and Consular Concerns. Overseas, he was previously assigned to the Philippine Embassy in Syria and the Philippine Embassy in Kenya. He has also been working with the Department of Foreign Affairs for 13 years. Next on our list is Mr. Abe Shinzō, who is Consul General of Canada in Los Angeles and the Government of Canada's Senior Representative in Southern California, Arizona, and Nevada. Consul General Shinzō comes to the posting after an extensive career in the media and entertainment industries, having worked as an actor and producer in theater, film, and television. Consul General Shinzō has also co-production and co-writer credits to his name. In this entertainment career, he has many accolades and responsibilities, too numerous for me to name here. The one I will mention is his position as Film Commissioner and Director of Entertainment Industries for the City of Toronto, in which he grew the city's screen, music, live festival, sporting event, and tourism sectors, effectively helping to double the value of film production in Canada's largest city. Finally, let me mention Consul General Kenko Sone. He is also participating in this panel. I did introduce him at the start of the event, so I will not introduce him again. Instead, let me simply note, it is my pleasure to have Consul General Sone bring his wealth of diplomatic expertise to the panel so that we can all learn from you as well. So the order of the speakers, we will go in sort of the reverse order, but we'll start with Consul General Sone, but I would ask all of our speakers to please join me on stage and we can get started. I will sit here. So we'll start with Consul General Sone, and he will provide his remarks at the.
Well, good afternoon once again. Thank you for joining this panel discussion. My name is Kenko Sone, Consulate General of Japan in Los Angeles. And I've been here for about a year and a half. And well, before that, of course, I've been working for foreign ministry for more than 30 years. So I know a little bit about the FOIP because it started when I was in India, actually. And so the first, I just touch upon a couple of issues that the Jeff raised for me to deliver. First, about the what free and open Indo-Pacific means and what is the purpose of that one. Well, it's their explanation that this free and open Indo-Pacific has been announced in 2016 at the Tokyo International Conference for African Development. It's held in Nairobi, Kenya. And Prime Minister Abe mentioned about the free and open Indo-Pacific. But actually his idea came even before that. In 2007, when he was the first-time Prime Minister, he visited India and made the speech at the Indian Parliament. His speech title is Confluence of the Two Seas. And he said in his speech, the Pacific and Indian Ocean are now bringing about a dynamic coupling as seas of freedom and prosperity. I think the Prime Minister Abe has really visionary ideas about the connecting these oceans, Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean together. And then based on that, his ideas, the freedom of Indo-Pacific has been flourished in 2016. The time I was in India, and then India people really fascinated about this idea. India is coming to the picture, or the big picture of diplomacy. And the reason why we pick up this Indo-Pacific region is because the two oceans is really covering from East Africa, African continent, Middle East, and South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Island countries, Oceanian countries, and North and South America. It's almost covering almost everywhere. And it's the fastest growing region, and it's also dynamic, and it also covers about half of the world populations. And that the concept is to seek the peace and prosperity in Indo-Pacific region through maintaining and strengthening the free and open international order based on the rule of law. In other words, we will enhance connectivity through the Indo-Pacific region, foster the region into a place where the value of freedom, rule of law, free from force or coercion, and make it prosperous. This is what the Prime Minister Kishida mentioned in his speech at the when he announced about his new plan. So now some people talk about, well, what is the most success so far for this FOIP, free and open in the Pacific achieved? I think it's the strengths of this vision is because that vision of free and Indo-Pacific has been shared so many countries, not only in the Asian Pacific region or Indo-Pacific regions. First of all, that of course the United States is a country who just started to work together on this the vision, and even U.S. changed the name of the Pacific Command into the Indo-Pacific Command, which Japanese Foreign Ministry not yet do the same things yet. And of course, the ASEAN countries, we have the colleagues from the Philippines, that the ASEAN also developed a new concept called the ASEAN Outlook of Indo-Pacific. And then India, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Pacific Island countries, Republic of Korea. And today we also have the panelists from the UK, that this idea of free and open in the Pacific is being also shared with most of the European countries as well. So it's really a global phenomenon. It is maybe the first time for that one of the Japanese idea has been so much shared by so many countries. Maybe because it's the flexibility of this vision. Vision is just not, dogmatic to you take this idea or not, or it's more like you can always take these ideas in your way, as far as you've been following the ideas of the freedom or the openness in this region. So that in that way, we have been very much lucky that we can have so much support from various countries. And of course, this is not only the vision that Japan is trying to make it, is to have some concrete actions and concrete results, which Japan has always put in emphasis. We have been providing so many assistance in the infrastructure, especially we've been focusing on the quality infrastructure in the various countries. It can really flourish each country to be more prosperous. We continue to do that as well. And also we have the collaboration with the so-called, in this morning we have discussion about the mini multilateral groups. We have a collaboration, the Japan, US, Australia, and India for the Quad cooperation, talking about this, the FOIP, and we have some collaboration with ASEAN countries, and we also have the collaboration with U.S. Japan and Republic of Korea. The trilateral companies also are talking about how to collaborate to flourish this free and open Indo-Pacific. And we also have several dialogue with the European countries as well. We also have talk in the G7 countries. So it's really important that not only the vision, but also based on that vision, we have to bring something concrete. That's what Japan is strong and always try to do for make this vision to be realized in the real sense, to make the prosperity in those countries. And then some people we sometimes use it, the strategy or the concept or the vision, or now we're also talking about the plans. So there are several terminologies, but I think we always emphasize this free and open Indo-Pacific is always the vision. That part is never changed, so from our perspective. And then in March last year, Prime Minister Kishida announced the plan in India. That the reason is because that we thought it may be important to share some more concrete ideas or some good new examples of actions to expand this cooperation for the vision to realize free and open in the Pacific. The Jimpo Sensei explaining about 51 items of the bazaar, a list of the cooperation, what sort of the activities, the collaboration, where the project will be useful for making this the FOIP will be been realized. And also, well, after the announcement of 2016, there are several changes in these ideas. Of course, there is no change in the fundamental concept of the FOIP. It remains the same. We have been defending the freedom and defending the rule of law, and we respect diversity and inclusivity and openness. These are the part of the very important part of the principle, the concept of this FOIP. So that it's easier for any country to join to talk about the free and open Indo-Pacific. But at the same time, because of the current situation in the global, it's really difficult, so much confrontations and divisions. So we thought it may be better to giving some way how to approach this FOIP. That's why the Prime Minister explained in his new plan for FOIP. So in that part, we've been focusing on the rulemaking through dialogue and focusing about the equal partnership. Everybody get together at the equal levels to discuss what will be the best way to achieve this, realize this FOIP. And we're also focusing on the people. Well, I think that now the Japanese government foreign policy is more focusing on the people. Even at the last year's UN General Assembly, Prime Minister talked about to going to the basic for the UN Charter, the human dignity. This is another part that Japan is really promoting in our foreign policy, the focusing on the people. I think it's always the case that Japan has been supporting the people, developing the human resources and capacity building. Those are the things we've been really continue to do. So there are several parts. I think the Jimpo senses the explanation. I mean that his PowerPoint also mentioned about 4 pillars of this FOIP. New plan. One is the principle for the peace and rule of prosperity. I think most important part of this first pillar is to promoting or oppose any unilateral attempt to change the status quo by force or coercion. This is really important for us to keep this important part of the FOIP, of the rule making or following the global rules. And the second one is the addressing the challenges in Indo-Pacific way. Well, it's a little difficult to capture, but the most important part is this is the part where Japan would like to tackle the global issues, the global commons, like the climate changes or the world issues. Let's see, I have to check my. So yes, so climate changes, food securities, or the global health, or disaster prevention. Those are the areas that we would like to promote. And this is area that maybe we can bring more countries to work together for dealing with those global issues. That's why we pick up the second pillar for dealing with the global issues of global commons. And third one is a multi-layered connectivity. If you talk about the connectivity, it's always, of course, the infrastructure is very important part, but we also focusing on the knowledge connectivities. We share the information or the ideas, and also the human connectivity, how to connect peoples. So people's connection, exchange of the people, but knowledge is also important part. And lastly, we also pick up the fourth pillar is about extending the efforts to security and safe use of sea and air. So starting with the oceans, we would like to make the freedom of navigation to the above the oceans, so that the airspace will be an important aspect that we've been working together with various countries to make this region more prosperous and free and open. So these are the ideas that Japan is really promoting. It's always nice to have the countries to collaborate with these issues. And I'm very much looking forward to talking with my colleagues from various countries, like-minded countries, to work together. And I'm very much looking forward for the discussion following. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Thank you again for Rand for inviting us. Of course, Japan House and the Consulate General of Japan for inviting us for this event. I'm here to represent the Philippine Consulate General of Los Angeles and of course the Department of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines. And since I'm the only one representing here ASEAN region, might as well bring that along as well. So we were given 3 questions to answer, but I will also be giving some remarks that were given by our Secretary of Foreign Affairs in a recent roundtable discussion on geopolitical and security challenges in the Indo-Pacific. This was given the 3rd EU Indo-Pacific Ministerial Forum recently in Brussels, Belgium. If the Indo-Pacific is to remain as an engine of global growth and human flourishing, especially in the midst of global uncertainties we face and sharpening geopolitical conflicts, we need to firstly keep to the path of peace, and secondly, build resilience. On the issue of peace, flashpoints that are flagged as risks to regional peace and stability have existed for a while, but they were managed through diplomacy, and regional architecture that has promoted and reinforced habits of dialogue and cooperation. What has changed particularly in the past decade is a pattern of aggression and militarization that has risen in the region. In particular, the South China Sea, such actions have violated the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, the 1982 Manila Declaration of the Peaceful Settlements and Disputes, and the 2002 Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea. Similarly, heightened tensions in the East China Sea, the Korean Peninsula, the Taiwan Straits, shake the stable security regime that has for decades underpinned the vitality of our region as an economic force. Overcharacterizing these developments, mainly as a function of the U.S.-China strategic rivalry, does not help in understanding the situation. For one, it puts the distinct and legitimate rights and interests of countries such as the Philippines aside, and secondary to the interests of the rivals. It also obscures our judgment. Actions that are clearly illegal in international law and against the UN Charter are sometimes justified under the pretext of this rivalry. At the same time, remedies to respond to these actions are viewed by a party in the prism of this strategic rivalry. The Indo-Pacific is no less vulnerable than other regions to the risks of uncertainties arising from the wars in Ukraine and Gaza and their impact on global security, our networked economies, and the already severely challenged humanitarian system. The Indo-Pacific confronts its most pronounced vulnerability in global warming, which threatens the very survival of millions of our communities, especially in small island developing states and least developed economies. And beyond security, the resilience of the Indo-Pacific encompasses integrated issues from climate and disaster resilience and the preservation of our ecosystems to the resilience of our supply chains, digital infrastructure, and our connected markets, and to the resilience of the functional mechanisms of dialogue, coordination, and cooperation to steward growth that benefits all and addresses cross-border challenges like pandemics and transnational crimes. The peace and resilience agenda of the Indo-Pacific share fundamental themes. Firstly, they are about people and communities, their security, their survival, their dignity, and their future. Secondly, they are about inclusion and giving equal regard to the rights and interests of all states, not just a few. Thirdly, they both thrive on cooperation. Rivalries and geopolitical dynamics weaken the solidarity we need to achieve mutually beneficial goals of high importance to our future. Lastly, neither can progress without a stable, predictable order based on the rule of law. Peace, rule of law, and the pursuit of a more prosperous, just, inclusive societies should not be sacrificed in the altar of transformative shifts in geopolitics. We have to keep our eye on our collective responsibilities in the face of change. We need to reinforce the fabric of multilateralism that allows us to work together for common purposes despite our differences. In a world in flux, the rule of law guarantees equity and stability in the global commons. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the maritime domain that predominates the Indo-Pacific context. First, ASEAN is the center of this region. Its inclusive processes, built and sustained over the last 6 decades, offered outlines of constructive dialogue and cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. This is what we call ASEAN centrality. Second, the future of this region is being shaped not by one or two powers, but by many actors, each with their own agency and legitimate interests. Indo-Pacific discussions must embrace the voices of these actors, including particularly ASEAN countries and Pacific Island states, individually and collectively. Third, the rule of law underpins an order that fosters respect, trust, and predictability in interstate relations. It is the compass that points to the true way forward and that calls out any form of coercion, intimidation, or use of force or threat to use of force for what they are, a contravention of the principles of ASEAN and the UN Charter. And lastly, our overarching objective remains to be the peaceful pursuit of development and more prosperous economies for our peoples and region. Geopolitical anxieties should not distract us from this. So the question is, how does our country evaluate Japan's FOIP? The vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific region, a region that upholds international law and the purposes and principles of UN Charter, is a vision that strongly aligns with President Marcos' advocacy that an open, inclusive, and rules-based international order that is governed by international law and informed by the principles of equity and justice is an important ballast that stabilizes our common vessel amidst changing global tides. So, as a country, that is our position, but also the vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific region likewise resonates with ASEAN's own aspirations for the Indo-Pacific, as expressed through the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific and articulated by the leaders of ASEAN and our close partners such as the U.S., Japan, India, Republic of Korea, and Australia. These convergences, informed and strengthened by our alliances with the U.S., our strategic partnerships with Japan and Australia, and the Philippines' partnerships with India and ROK, call upon us to harness our collective strengths through bilateral, regional, and multilateral channels to shape the future of the Indo-Pacific in accordance with this shared vision. Our country's approach to the Indo-Pacific, the Philippines fully supports the central role of ASEAN as the only regional platform that can draw in the major countries together in the Indo-Pacific. We therefore encourage our partners to uphold the commitment to ASEAN centrality and to continue their active participation in the ASEAN-led regional architecture, including the East Asia Summit, or EAS, and the ASEAN Regional Forum, ARF, to promote regional peace and security in the Indo-Pacific. We also seek our partner support to undertake cooperation with ASEAN through the implementation of high-impact and sustainable joint projects and programs under the 4 priority areas of cooperation of the AOIP, from enhancing maritime cooperation and security, advancing economic prosperity and resilience, and building regional connectivity, to advocating for common approaches to new and emerging security issues. What role does Japan and the U.S. Japan alliance play in your country's foreign policy strategy, particularly in the Indo-Pacific? Japan's role and the U.S. Japan alliance are critical, very critical, to ensure that free and open Indo-Pacific vision is realized. The Philippines welcomes Japan stepping up its global role by taking the lead among Asian nations in the defense of a free and open Indo-Pacific. The Philippines also believes that the future of the Indo-Pacific is being shaped not just by 1 or 2 powers, but by many actors, each with their own agency and legitimate interests and voice. We believe that Indo-Pacific discussions, such as this roundtable, must embrace the voices of these actors, including ASEAN countries and Pacific Island states, both individually and collectively. The Philippines also welcomes that ASEAN and its dialogue partners, including Japan and United States, are harmonizing Indo-Pacific strategies within the priorities. And again, to close, we'd like to thank RAND Corporation for inviting us to this event. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Merci beaucoup. And thank you, Dr. Horning and Rand, and of course, Japan House and the Consulate General of Japan for inviting us as Canadians to this important discussion. I want to say hello and greetings, obviously, to everyone in the room, but also I'd note that there's a live stream audience, hopefully a global one, and hopefully these remarks and this discussion that's about to ensue will be informative and hopefully a little bit enlightening as well. It's a special honor, obviously, to join my colleagues, as I said, from Japan, of course, the United Kingdom, Philippines, here in the US, representing some of the closest allies for Canada. And I'll start to explain what that means to Canada. All of us here know, and we've been hearing and describing how important the Indo-Pacific region is critically, not just to the world from our point of view, but incredibly critical to Canada. First of all, it continues to be the world's fastest growing economic region, accounting for almost 2/3 of global growth. It is home to 5 of Canada's top 10 trading partners. And by 2030, all studies show that the Indo-Pacific will be home to 2/3 of the global middle class. And by 2040, which is all just around the corner, it will account for more than half of the global economy. The Indo-Pacific region is also at the epicenter of generational global shift. Canadians are acutely and accurately aware that every issue that matters to Canada, whether that's national security, economic prosperity, democratic values, public health, the quality of our environment, or human rights, will be shaped by the developments in the Indo-Pacific region and with the relationships that Canada has with its Indo-Pacific partners. With that in mind, Canada and the Canadian government has made the Indo-Pacific one of the main pillars of our foreign policy. Within that, it's interesting and important to note that Canada is the only G7 nation that has a trade treaty with every other G7 nation in the world. But here, I want to make an important note that in November 22nd, Canada adopted the Indo-Pacific Strategy, our only formal geographically focused foreign strategy. So while we have many treaties around trade, this has, of course, become an important point of our global foreign strategy. It aims to advance and defend Canada and our allies' interests by supporting a more secure, prosperous, inclusive, and sustainable region. Words, concepts, themes that you've heard not only from my colleagues, but I'm sure you're all aware of, is of incredible importance right now in a 2024 geopolitical climate. It aims to advance and defend not only the national and economic security, but also it's important to note that this strategy injects 1.7 billion, that's USD, not CAD, over 5 years in support of 5 interconnected strategic objectives. And so I'll review these 5 objectives and you'll start seeing what I mean by the top of my remarks. The first objective is promoting peace, resilience, and security. How's that going to happen? Well, Canada supports a free and open Indo-Pacific, working in close cooperation with its allies and partners. And our diplomacy promotes respect for international law, including the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea and the peaceful resolution of disputes. Canada also has a whole of government approach when it comes to security and defense, including our participation of course, the Foreign Ministry, our counterterrorism programs, our weapons reduction efforts, our border agency, and the Canadian Armed Forces. Canada is working with its partners to enhance reliance and preparedness to protect against coercive tactics and the spread of disinformation. The second objective of our Indo-Pacific strategy is this: expanding trade, investment, and supply chain resilience. Canada is a trading nation. We may be one of the largest nations in the world, bordering on the Atlantic, Pacific, and Arctic seas, but we only have 40 million people. So we're, in a way, one of the largest, smallest countries in the world. And that's why we have to, and we have prioritized being a trade nation. It's in our national interest. It helps build our supply chain resilience with traditional and emerging Indo-Pacific partners. So Canada seeks to foster a more open and predictable and sustainable regional economic order through a number of the initiatives, including an enhanced trade program, grant program representing $8.6 million, and that's CAD now, in new funding. A new series of Team Canada trade missions in the Indo-Pacific region, facilitating long-term trade and investment opportunities. The Canadian Trade Gateway in Southeast Asia, which is a Singapore-based hub that will help Canadian businesses, investors, and innovators grow their engagement and presence in the region. Increased support for bilateral co-innovation projects through science, technology, and innovation between Canada and Canadian small businesses and key Indo-Pacific partners, including, of course, Japan, Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, and India. The establishment of an Indo-Pacific Agriculture and Agri-Food Office in Manila, Philippines, of course, and providing new technical assistance to Indo-Pacific trading partners to improve not only the enforcement of labor provisions, but also future free trade agreements. So the third pillar now of Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy is investing and connecting in people. You can't have a healthy trade gateway if you don't invest and connect people. Canada is deeply invested and helped and connected through the Indo-Pacific region through our people-to-people and historical ties. Because while we may be a small nation from population, much of that population is actually a global immigrant population. And so these ties become the heart of our Indo-Pacific strategy. Close to 18% of Canadians trace their origins to the region, and 60% of international students coming to Canada come from the Indo-Pacific region. Canada is bolstering visa processing capacities in key locations in the region, including in Singapore, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Pakistan, the Philippines, and Vietnam. Canada also expanded electronic travel authorization eligibility for travelers from Thailand and the Philippines, enabling visa-free travel for eligible individuals. Canada is also leveraging its reputation as a top education destination by launching over 1,000 scholarship and fellowship opportunities for students coming from the ASEAN region and Canadians going to the region. Further, Canada is continuing to deliver on its feminist international assistance and defend human rights through partnerships with Canadian civil society and stakeholders in the region. And we also continue to provide critical humanitarian assistance, especially in times of crisis. And we all know we continue to see crises getting faster, more inclusive in their own way, which is an unfortunate development. But Canada is there with its partners. We're also a reliable partner in terms of our fourth strategy, of our objective of our strategy, and that is building a sustainable and green future, because we are committed to working with our Indo-Pacific partners to respond to the challenge of climate change and environmental degradation. How do we do that? Well, we co-chair a maritime domain awareness working group as part of the Partners in the Blue Pacific Initiative, coordinating and implementing capacity support offered to the Pacific Islands. Canada is also establishing a signature initiative in the region on disaster risk and resilience that enables Canada to share expertise and to help countries adopt the impacts of climate-induced disasters before, during, and after disaster strike. And we're also, of course, a reliable and responsible energy exporter and have the potential to be both an energy security partner and an energy transition collaborator. And the fifth and final interconnected pillar of our Indo-Pacific strategy is this: ensuring Canada remains an active and engaged partner in the Indo-Pacific. Under our strategy, Canada is expanding its diplomatic and personnel footprint in the region. Canada is appointing senior executives to focus on the Indo-Pacific. We've already had our ambassador to Japan, Ambassador McKay, appointed as the country's first special envoy to the Indo-Pacific region in April 2023. He will continue to serve not only as ambassador, but as the special envoy, recognizing that Canada's relationship and cooperation with Japan is critical to a free and open Indo-Pacific. And in September 2023, quickly on the heels of that first appointment that I spoke about, our Prime Minister also appointed Canada's new Indo-Pacific trade representative. And this senior trade executive is embedded in Canada's mission to ASEAN and will lead on Indo-Pacific trade and investment strategy implementation. Now, beyond these two important appointments, more than 100 new positions will be added to Canada's diplomatic network in the Indo-Pacific by this summer. So it's around the corner. We better get going. These are the 5 objectives, and they align from my point of view and Canada's point of view with our allies' visions very clearly. Both Japan and the U.S. Japan alliance play crucial roles in shaping Canada's foreign policy in the Indo-Pacific region. But let me turn to how this really means to the Japan and Canada alliance, frankly. Japan is a trusted and natural partner for Canada. We have shared values, including respect for democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Japan also plays a key role as our only G7 partner in that region. Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy, and as the Consul General described, Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific vision, both emphasize the importance of promotion and protection of a rules-based order, economic prosperity, and regional stability. Japan and Canada collaborate on security and defense matters as well, facing shared challenges from an assertive China, from North Korea, and from Russia. Canada's alignment with both Japan and the US are important to the promotion of security and stability in the Indo-Pacific. It's important to note here that Canada and US are the only binational command in the world. That means we secure our land, air, and sea together, but also we command each other's armed forces to protect that land, air, and sea, depending on the base. So that's how important this alliance becomes when you really take that perspective. Our objectives are so well aligned with Japan and Canada that in 2021, the 2 countries actually adopted their own bilateral mechanism, the Japan-Canada 6 shared priorities. And those 6 shared priorities are, and you already heard most of them from the Consul General, but I want to just make sure you know how Canada plays an integral part of the strategy, plays a piece in it. Number 1, rule of law. I've said that about 6 times, so hopefully you're getting the message. Peacekeeping operations, peace building, humanitarian assistance, and disaster relief. Health, security, and responding in that moment to COVID-19, but also any other world pandemics, endemics that may be coming our way. Energy security, free trade promotion and trade agreement implementation, and environment and climate change. That's a key component of our bilateral relationship, these 6 shared principles and priorities. And in October 2022, Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jolie, and her Japanese counterpart jointly released an action plan to implement these 6 shared priorities. And when the Prime Minister of Japan visited Canada in January 2023, he and our Prime Minister reaffirmed not only the strength of that strategic partnership, but emphasized their shared commitment to a free, open, and inclusive entire Indo-Pacific region. And most recently, just the last couple of months, as the year turned into 2024, our foreign minister hosted Japan's foreign minister to review that progress. And here's what they found. Since the launch of that action plan, concrete progress has been made with more than 90% of those initiatives that are currently in view. And those key priorities include the promotion and protections of that rules-based international order, enhancing regional security and stability, bolstering the economic security as well. And so, of course, to the Consul General, I say, and we know our leaders have already said this, but we look forward to continuing that work with our shared objectives. I also want to touch a little bit about what the Consul General spoke about in terms of that alliance, as Canada and the US share a unique and unparalleled and integrated relationship, not only from a binational command point, but from an integrated supply chain point of view. Canada believes the US Japan alliance also remains a regional linchpin for security and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. And Canada recognizes the importance of this alliance in maintaining peace and promoting shared values. The U.S.-Japan bilateral partnership is so important to us because we understand its collective security possibilities and priorities in the Indo-Pacific. So we collaborate with both Japan and the United States to address those security challenges, including maritime security and cyber threats, as well as the threat posed by North Korea. And importantly, Canada has now committed to deploying 3 warships in the region annually. The U.S.-Japan partnership also drives our own economic growth and innovation. So that aligns with Canada's strategy to foster an open, rules-based trade benefiting, that's the 7th time, benefiting from the economic dynamism of the region. So working together with Japan, the U.S., and partners in and out of that region, Canada, we feel, aims to continue not just supporting, but promoting and protecting a free, open, and sustainable and inclusive Indo-Pacific. We're committed to working with our allies, and I thank so much for these introductory remarks. Thank you.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay? Hi, everyone. My name's Emily Cloak. I'm the British Consul General based in Los Angeles. And firstly, what a pleasure it is to be here today in Japan House. What a gorgeous building in the heart of Hollywood, and with a fantastic diplomatic panel and audience. So many thanks to all involved in convening this here today. I think it speaks to the fact that LA is unique in having the third largest consular corps in the world, and the fact that you have so many countries represented and that you can convene different countries around the table here today. So many thanks for that. I'd like to start with a few statistics and facts, because at the heart of everything that we're talking about is people. So on people, as we were preparing for this talk, at least 1.7 million Brits are in the Asia-Pacific region, quite a sizable amount. 60% of global shipping passes through the Indo-Pacific, so that has direct implication for households in the UK. And then in terms of trade, one of the areas that's been talked about by countries here today, trade between the UK and the Indo-Pacific is 17.1% of global trade between the UK and all its trading partners. So I hope that indicates, just with a few facts, just how important the region is for the UK. So when we were asked to come and speak here today, we were asked to focus our opening remarks on 3 different questions. So I will take each of those in turn. Firstly, how does your country evaluate Japan's FOIP? And do we have anything similar? I think quite simply, the answer for us is that the initiative is closely aligned with UK priorities and our approach to the Indo-Pacific. Increasingly, the geopolitical environment, both across the Euro-Atlantic and the Indo-Pacific, is characterized by strategic competition, unprecedented security challenges, and cross-cutting global threats. And some of those were raised today, areas such as climate change and also rapid technological developments. The UK does have a similar strategy to the FOIP. Back in 2021, the UK published a foreign policy approach called the Integrated Review. It identified, as just said, that the world was becoming tested and volatile. And then in 2023, that approach, that policy document was updated, and it really put the Indo-Pacific at the heart of the UK's foreign policy strategy, starting with the Indo-Pacific tilt, as it was then named, and then being identified as something that should be a permanent feature of the UK's foreign policy. And I'd also like to say that the UK really does share the same values as the FOIP, and that has been highlighted by all countries here today. We're committed to shaping an open and stable international order on the basis of reciprocity, the norms of responsible behavior, and respect for the fundamental principles of the UN Charter and international law. So the next question we're asked to focus on, 2 of 3, what is your country's approach to the Indo-Pacific? Do you have a strategy? So I've touched on the integrated review. That was really a comprehensive review of the UK's defence, security, development, and foreign policy, and also economic and trade, where it highlighted the importance of the Indo-Pacific region to the UK's economy, its security, and global ambition to support open societies. It affirmed that prosperity and security of the Euro-Atlantic and the Indo-Pacific are inextricably linked. The refresh in 2023 concluded that the UK had delivered on its initial ambition for a tilt and committed to further enhancing our relationships in the Indo-Pacific through a combination of bilateral, minilateral, and institutional relationships across the region. I'd also like to say that the UK's role in the region is guided by a respect for regional perspectives, and in particular recognizes the central role ASEAN plays in contributing to peace, prosperity, and security there. And just as an example, in terms of what the UK has done in the Indo-Pacific, taking trade as an example, the UK has recently, back in 2023, signed the CPTPP, bringing it into quite a sizable block of nations, I believe approximately 11. And there's a whole host of other agreements that the UK has also been working with partners on, which I can touch on later during the discussion. And then finally, what role does Japan and the U.S. Japan alliance play in our country's foreign policy strategy, particularly in the Indo-Pacific? Our third question. So it goes without saying, and why I was so keen to come here today, that Japan is a key partner for us. The UK's relationship with Japan is a key priority and one of the fastest growing amongst all our international partners. We'd say that Japan is our closest partner in the Indo-Pacific and was at the heart of the Indo-Pacific tilt that I mentioned earlier, recognizing the depth of our shared values and complementary strengths. And to highlight that with an example, back in May 2023, our prime ministers signed the historic Hiroshima Accord, which committed the UK and Japan to even deeper collaboration. Together, we have reached landmark agreements across the breadth of our relationship, including agreements on defense, for example, the Global Combat Air Programme, and also the Reciprocal Access Agreement, a digital agreement called the UK-Japan Digital Partnership, agreements on cyber, UK-Japan Cyber Partnership, on science and innovation, for example, a semiconductor partnership, and also trade. In addition to signing up to CPTPP, the UK has also developed a range of trade dialogues and forums through our ministers with Japan there. So it goes without saying that the UK, I think, is firmly aligned with our partners here today and what's been discussed by fellow diplomats and consul generals. And the UK-Japan relationship is a critical one for us. So thank you so much. And I will join the rest of the discussion now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, all of you. That was wonderful. We have about 20 minutes. I'm going to open up with some questions for each of our speakers, and gives you also time to think about any questions you might have. So I'm going to ask each of you a question. The first question is for Consul General Cloak and Consul General Sheikh, and it's the same question. But we often hear scholars, there's a lot of commentary. I know in Washington, D.C. we see it, but we hear scholars and experts say that the distance from your country to the Indo-Pacific is far too great for you to have any persistent engagement in the region. Do you agree? So that's your question. For Consul Malian, here we hear there's a lot of commentary by experts and analysts that say Philippines is caught in kind of a difficult situation. On one hand, you have very close security ties with the United States, and on the other hand, you have very close economic ties with China. And that's a very difficult situation that you have in terms of trying to engage with the region. Do you agree that that's a difficult situation to be in? And then for Consul General Sone, we heard a lot from each of our speakers and all the engagement that they do in the region. Just curious on if you could offer us your thoughts on how cooperation from Japan, how cooperation with each of these countries fits into Japan's FOIP approach. So with that, why don't we just start with Consul General Cloak and make our way down?
Sure, I'll just test the tech as well. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, good. So I'd like to go back to the facts that I started with, which I think indicate that even though we're geographically, it takes a number of hours to get to the Indo-Pacific from the UK, it is still, that's not a barrier, of course, to our approach and our strategy. And just to go back to those figures, actually the region is home to half of the world's people, so that obviously the 1.7 million is quite small in comparison, but for the UK that's a sizable number of Brits over in the Indo-Pacific. I mentioned the value of the trading partnership and a whole host of other areas. I hope that underlines just how distance and geography doesn't interfere with the importance of the Indo-Pacific to the UK. And the security and the prosperity of the Euro-Atlantic and the Indo-Pacific is inextricably linked. I'd go as far as to say inseparable. But just to say a little bit more on the UK's Indo-Pacific strategy that I touched on during my opening remarks, I'll give you just a few examples of the depth of the collaboration and cooperation. So where shall I start? So on trade and investment, the UK has concluded negotiations to the CPTPP. It also has a number of FTAs throughout the region as well. On defence and security, the UK has launched the AUKUS partnership back in 2021 with the US and Australia and has announced the AUKUS submarine project. It's launched the Global Combat Air Programme with Japan and Italy. It's signed various other agreements in that space as well. And the UK has also engaged with over 40 countries as part of our carrier strike group deployment to take defence and security. The UK has been deepening its ties there. In 2021, for example, there was a deployment of the carrier strike group and the permanent deployment of 2 offshore patrol vessels, which shows the UK's commitment to the region. In climate, so that was one of the areas that my fellow panelists touch on during the remarks. So the Indo-Pacific is central to the UK's climate ambitions. It is home to 5 of the top 10 gas-emitting countries and 6 of the 10 countries most affected by climate change. We live in a very interconnected world, and obviously climate change will affect all of us. So the UK has undertaken a number of partnerships in that space, mobilising with partners there billions of pounds in green finance, including something called the UK's Climate Action for a Resilient Asia programme. The UK also does a lot of work in areas like official development assistance through initiatives such as the British International Partnerships. So I hope that goes to show with just a few examples that geography and flight times is not an impediment to our close partnerships with the Indo-Pacific. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that question. And I think you asked whether we agree, and I think the answer in a word is no. Whether we're the UK, obviously, as Consul General Cloak eloquently put, with some facts. I think both UK and Canada are very interested in facts and science. And so what I will sort of elucidate here is that, first of all, the difference we think of is not about its proximity, perhaps, but our interconnectedness from a people-to-people links, as I spoke about in my remarks quickly. That's what our key driving force is between our connection to the region. And also nearly 1 out of 5 Canadians trace their heritage to the Indo-Pacific region. And the largest diasporas in Canada are of Indo-Pacific origin. And as I mentioned earlier, 60% of Canada's international students hail from that region. And so right there, just from a population point of view, our population is deeply interested and invested in what happens and what is happening in the region from a day-to-day basis, and also connected to what is happening because there are family members, they're intergenerational, they understand the history in a way that perhaps other countries might not understand, because not only are they from the region, they're from the countries that represent that region, and they are part of families that are in those countries. And so that is a real important part. Another thing I think we have to remember is that Canada was a founding member of APEC. the preeminent economic forum in the Asia Pacific region, along with great countries that are on this panel, Japan, the Philippines, and 9 other. So we are a Pacific nation. The Pacific is a big body of water, but we, as I said, are a big landmass that connects there. And so we, whether it's, the shores of British Columbia, and I used to live in Vancouver, I'm originally from Toronto, probably even more in sort of deeply away from the Pacific. And yet, first of all, Toronto, 50% of that city has international people coming to it, and over 240 languages are spoken in that city. But if you look at that Pacific city, that Pacific region of Vancouver and Victoria, you'll see a lot of, as I said, immigrant populations and long-standing immigrant populations who continue to be connected to the region itself. And that speaks to, I think, what our breadth and width is. We also became an ASEAN dialogue partner in 1977, one of only 11. And so in September 23, we reaffirmed that because our Prime Minister participated in the ASEAN-Canada Summit in Jakarta, where ASEAN and Canada officially launched, as I said, their strategic partnership, welcoming a new chapter ostensibly in that relationship. And as I said before, and I think Consul General Cloak also talked about, right, what's an important trade agreement with us? Well, that's the CPTPP. And our current ambassador to the U.S. Was actually our chief trade negotiator when that agreement, when Canada signed on to that. So we have leading representatives currently who represent us when we think about Canada, Pacific, Indo-Pacific Alliance, who are not only serving now, but who have been the key forces and factors that created the relationships that the world enjoys, and Canada is a part of that. So that's the longer answer to your question. Thanks.
Thank you, both of you, because there's always a tendency to either think at just how many days a naval vessel can steam to the region, or sort of these larger level things. Getting it down to the people level is really critical. So thank you for that. Consul Malion?
Yeah, your question was our relationship with China and the US, right? Balancing it. Yes, we value both partnerships, of course, they're still both our friends, especially the US has always been there for us and has been a long-standing partner, security, economic, and all other aspects. There are times when it's more difficult with China, and there are times that are more difficult also with the US. Sometimes that's dictated by whoever's in power in each of that country, and sometimes developments coming out of, like, say, in 2016 when there was the arbitral decision against China that we had. Okay, so when we talk about that, for example, was a time when it was really difficult with dealing with China, having that legal document imposed. But the way we deal with China is that while we have that arbitral decision, for example, the arbitral decision is there, but our relationship with them is more than that issue. For those of you who might, for example, it's like having a neighbor who you had like a dispute with, but you still have to deal with them in other ways. Your children are still friends, still get invited to some parties, for example. You still trade Christmas cards, but that border, the fence is still an issue between you two. So that is something that we have been trying to navigate between the two countries. The arbitral decision is our position, and it's always there. But that is not the entirety of our relationship with China. We have long-standing familial ties, economic ties, even regional cooperations with them also. So if we focus on this arbitral decision, for example, we might be foregoing the rest of the things that we are not in contention with China with. No? But with the US, it's always been something that has been constant for the most part between the Philippines and the US. Of course, sometimes there will be some statements that affect the relationship, but that's more of a surface level issue. Under some statements that might be provocative so to speak, the relationship between the US and the Philippines has always been stable throughout the years.
Just for the realization rate FOIP, I think we have very close collaboration with each countries, starting from the UK. Well, I think like after the Brexit, we quickly make the agreement with the bilateral agreement, and now that the UK is in the part of the CPTPP, that is a strong encouragement for us that the engagement of UK in this region. And then, well, of course, Canada and the Philippines are all member of the CPTPP. Well, Japan is always the position to encourage US to coming back. So we still hope, and it's a good sign that the Canadian ambassador to US is in the chief negotiator. Is a good a message for the United States as well. Well, there's all the economic part of the CPTPP, and we have for the Canada and the Philippines, we are also in the member of the APEC. We have a lot of collaborations, but at least with the Canada, as Council General mentioned about the Prime Minister's visit as well as Foreign Minister's visit, it's really showing the strong collaboration in the realization of FOIP. And the Philippines, of course, ASEAN is always a center of cooperation in this region. And we have the joint declaration for the collaboration with Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific and the ASEAN outlook of Indo-Pacific. So we are trying to focusing on the concrete collaborations in the Indo-Pacific regions for the infrastructure or the development program, capacity building. And also, the last year, we celebrated the 50 years anniversary of our Japan-ASEAN relations. We invited all leaders from ASEAN countries to Tokyo and discuss this issue. So that I think that everybody, those countries, really important partner. And it's a good thing that this vision is always open to future collaboration with any countries who are interested to sharing this vision. So we are always happy to have that collaborations.
So we have about 7 minutes. If there are questions, I'd like to just pool them and then get them for the speakers. So I don't think I'll be able to get who has a question? I see 3. Okay, let's just do these 3 quick questions. And I ask all 3 of you, please make your questions succinct. So we'll start in the back, we'll come there, and then at the.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. My question is actually about Hong Kong, because I think all of your countries have close ties, whether through tourism, through trade, through immigration, or through history with the country itself, or with Hong Kong itself. And I'd just like to know what your countries are doing with respect to the erosion of rights and the changes in the electoral system and the really total disregard for the Sino-British joint declaration. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's one question about Hong Kong. Next, can we get this gentleman right here?
Hi, thank you so much for being here, everyone. Great to see you, U.S. allies and partners on stage. My question is regarding freedom of navigation and how that plays into the Japan's FOIP vision and how critical that is to FOIP. And is there still utility for our FONOPS operations?
Hi, my name is Matthew Sada from the University of Southern California and the Department of State. My question is actually for Mr. Sheikh, and it's regarding Pakistan. Because the definition of Indo-Pacific that the United States might use, that Japan might use, for the first time I heard that Canada's strategy includes Pakistan in that region. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about kind of, or for all of us, like where do the borders of this Indo-Pacific end? And to what extent is Pakistan a player in this strategy?
Wonderful. Thank you all for being very succinct with your questions. So why don't we start with Consul General Sheikh, since there was a question directed to you, and then I'll ask each of you to briefly give an answer if you have one. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that question. First of all, I guess I should give a personal declaration. When I speak about the Indo-Pacific, I know I came across from a very third-person objective point of view, but my grandmother was born in Delhi and my parents were born in Lahore. So I, as a Canadian, am actually a representative from a history of the Indo-Pacific region, and more specifically, India and Pakistan. And so I would just say that we see all countries as having a possibility, frankly, of not only equal footing from a point of view of what they want to provide the Indo-Pacific region, but also from their populations. But it is up to those countries to ensure the resilience of their political frameworks, their economic frameworks, and their commitments to human rights. And so any country in the region that can really top up and show that full support for those sort of key principles, Canadian values, those countries are always not only welcome at the table, but Canada will be a leading sort of supporter of those kinds of countries. And so where Pakistan can fit and will fit, and where it may fit is currently, as you know, from a geopolitical standpoint, up for grabs, also from a Pakistani probably point of view. But from a Canadian point of view, we are here for all countries to be part of what we call the Indo-Pacific region, and that's why we're committed to each country. Now, of course, whether it's Japan or other countries, we highlight, we have more integrated trade with some countries. We talk about the U.S. alliance, because I spoke about our integration with the U.S., so where the U.S. alliance goes with countries also is meaningful to us. But it's also important to remember that whether it's the US or the Philippines or other countries, when we speak about that China dynamic, we are all deeply integrated currently with China. And so we all have the same issue and challenge that our consul from the Philippines had to address. We all need to take a hard look, and we are taking a hard look, but we all have to remember that it might be a little easier to look at another country and question its ties and not necessarily our own. And that's currently what we're doing. So again, I hope that answers the question. I took it a little down and then lensed up, but I hope that answers the question. Thanks.
So we have about 3 minutes left. Does somebody want to tackle the question of the importance of FONOPs and efforts in Hong Kong?
I'll shut up now, so.
So freedom of navigation, the importance of the freedom of navigation operations, for instance, that the United States Navy is conducting in the region. Please go ahead.
Regards to the Hong Kong question, yeah, we understand the situation there. You know, we have a consulate there, a consulate general, handling a lot of people in Hong Kong, and we see the situation. And of course, this is a Chinese issue. China covers Hong Kong; it's their territory. What we are concerned in as a country is more of the human rights issue. And in terms of while there's a shift, and this is an ongoing shift, and in terms of how it is being ruled or Hong Kong is being ruled, there are some adjustments that are being done, I guess, and some of the human rights violations, some of the human rights issues, I should say, have come to the forefront, and we are of course keenly observing that. And whatever the Chinese rules or laws that are being implemented in Hong Kong, that's something for them to decide. But in terms of the human rights, that's not something specific to just China. No, it's something universal that we as observers, as other participants, especially for us, Philippines, was about 250,000 Filipinos in Hong Kong is worried about, because that would affect our people too. But I'm saying that we are worried about human rights, not just because there are 250,000 Filipinos in Hong Kong, but that is how we see things in terms of having laws being implemented to a people, because we've experienced that situation as well.
Consul General Cloak, would you like to make remarks?
I'll test my tech again, as I've done with each question. I think my diplomatic colleague has stressed the importance of human rights. Globally, the UK is a huge advocate for that as well. So there's a long and shared history with Hong Kong. We have connections from people to people links, trade and economic, and the list goes on. I'm not an expert on the developments going on in Hong Kong, so I can't speak to that in lots of detail, but the UK has a diplomatic presence there, a deep relationship with Hong Kong, and is very focused on the rights and so on that was just mentioned on the human rights side, and a lot of obviously travel going back and forth, and UK has a comprehensive visa scheme for Hong Kong as well. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, well, the same that we also, Japan also shared the concern. We express our serious concern about the situation in Hong Kong for the deterioration of the human rights and democratic processes. So we are sharing this, although those are the concerns be shared with most of the countries, including the G7 countries, in several occasions issued a statement and for these concerns. But of course, it's really hard to make real changes happening in this region. But I think the Hong Kong itself has real a challenge that they might have a lot of a problem for the economic situations, that it's not really helping the people in Hong Kong as well. So that is also real concerns. Speaking of the freedom of navigation, well, it's really important. Seeing this situation in South China Sea as well as East China Sea, there is the Chinese vessel coming nearby the Senkaku Island. It's always a concern. And I didn't mention that the last my intervention that we also have more collaborations with the security issues. We have been welcoming those military, well, I mean the Navy vessels visiting this region from UK and to Canada, and we have so a lot of collaboration with the Philippines as well. So that I think the freedom of navigation, the freedom in the ocean is really important for us for the economic and security in all aspects.
So please join me in thanking this wonderful diplomatic roundtable. So we will take a 15-minute break, and then we will reconvene for our last panel focusing on economics. So thank you.